Humanity had always been seen as insignificant in the grand scale of the galaxy. The coalition of galaxies, a powerful alliance of alien races, ensured it stayed that way. For centuries, Earth had been bound by a set of laws so strict they were impossible to challenge. Humans were not allowed to explore the stars, trade freely with other systems, or even develop technology beyond certain limits. Any attempt to rise above these laws was met with swift punishment, from sabotage of scientific endeavors to full military strikes. The Coalition's fear was simple. If humanity unlocked its true potential, it could become a galaxy-altering force. They believed that Earth's relentless drive, their unyielding will to survive, could one day topple their reign. So they kept Earth in chains, with every human activity monitored and controlled. But what the Coalition didn't understand was the human spirit. It could be suppressed, delayed, and even crushed, but it could never truly be extinguished. And while the Coalition's eyes were trained on Earth, focusing on their every move, they failed to notice the quiet rebellion brewing in the dark corners of the planet. In secret, humanity's brightest minds began to gather. They knew what the stakes were, they knew the risk, but the choice was clear: submit or fight. At a hidden facility buried deep in the mountains of what was once the Pacific Northwest, Commander Lena Hayes paced back and forth in front of a holographic display. She was tall and strong, with short cropped hair that had grayed slightly at the temples. Her reputation in the military was legendary, but here, among the select few, she wasn't commanding soldiers. She was leading a revolution. Around her, a team of engineers, scientists, and hackers worked tirelessly, their eyes focused, hands never stopping. They were building something the Coalition would never expect. "How's the power grid coming?" Lena asked, her voice steady, but tinged with impatience. Dr. Samuel Roth, a physicist with a knack for bending the laws of energy, tapped his screen. "We've managed to extract energy from the quantum field, but it's unstable. One wrong move, and we'll have an explosion that could level the entire facility. We're close, though. We just need more time." Lena nodded. Time was something they didn't have. The Coalition would come sooner or later, and when they did, it would be all-out war. As she walked over to the table where a model of their project stood, Lena allowed herself a brief moment of doubt. The ship they were building, an incredible fusion of human engineering and salvaged alien technology, was their only hope. It wasn't just a warship, it was a symbol, a beacon of humanity's refusal to be crushed. If they succeeded, they would finally prove what the galaxy had forgotten. Humanity was more than capable of standing on its own. The door to the room slid open, and a man with a worn expression entered. It was General Gabriel Tan, a veteran who had led some of Earth's most critical defenses. His face was grim, and Lena could see the weight of what they were attempting in his eyes. "Coalition ships have been spotted near the outer rim," Tan said. "They're already coming. We can't afford to waste time. If we don't finish this ship now, we'll be wiped out before we can even fire a shot." Lena stood tall, her resolve hardening like steel. "Then we finish it. Whatever it takes." The hidden facility was a labyrinth of tunnels, high-tech labs, and research rooms where humanity's future was being secretly forged. Deep underground, the sound of steady work filled the air. The team, a mix of engineers, physicists, hackers, and former military officers, moved like well-oiled machinery. They had been working in the shadows for years, their efforts masked by false reports and fabricated records. It was a dangerous game they played. One wrong move, one slip of the tongue, and the Coalition would descend upon them with a fury that would leave no trace of their existence. At the center of this operation was Dr. Samuel Roth, the brilliant mind behind the Quantum Energy Project. He was hunched over a workbench, his fingers flying across a series of holographic screens as he attempted to stabilize the volatile power source they had discovered. Beside him, Lena Hayes watched with a mixture of concern and awe. The quantum energy they had harnessed was unlike anything the Coalition had ever seen, and its potential was both terrifying and exhilarating. This could change everything, Dr. Roth muttered, almost to himself. If we can stabilize the energy field, we'll have more power than any fleet in the galaxy could dream of. But there's always a risk. One miscalculation, and the entire thing could collapse. We need to be perfect. Lena crossed her arms and leaned against the wall, her gaze sharp as she looked at the glowing energy core. We don't have the luxury of perfection, Sam. We don't even have the luxury of time. The Coalition spies are everywhere. If they find us, this whole operation is over. Dr. Roth looked up from his work, his eyes darkening with the weight of her words. I know, but perfection is the only way forward. Anything less, and we're just throwing our lives away. Lena gave him a tight smile, though the unease in her gut gnawed her. I've thrown my life away before. I'm willing to do it again, if it means we finally get to show the galaxy what humanity can really do. As the hum of machinery filled the room, Lena turned her attention to the warship itself. The design was almost complete, its structure an imposing blend of human ingenuity and salvaged alien technology. The hull, reinforced with a material that was lighter than anything Earth had previously worked with, would allow the ship to move faster than anything the Coalition could track. Its weaponry was something the galaxy had never seen before: plasma cannons capable of obliterating entire fleets in seconds, and a shield system so advanced it could absorb and redirect energy blasts with ease. The warship was more than just a machine. It was a symbol of defiance, a statement that humanity would not be silenced. Lena glanced at General Gabriel Tan, who stood nearby, overseeing the progress of the ship's armament. His brow was furrowed, and his eyes, though tired, held a spark of determination. We're ready for the final phase, Tan said, his voice steady. But once we engage, there's no turning back. If the Coalition hasn't noticed us yet, they will after this. We'll be painted targets. Lena nodded, her mind already shifting to the inevitable battle ahead. Then we make sure the first strike counts. Dr. Roth, still working on the power core, didn't look up. We're going to need a miracle. Lena's voice was firm, unwavering. Humanity doesn't need miracles. We make our own. As she turned away, the warship looming large behind her, the team's efforts culminated in a single, undeniable truth. They were about to show the galaxy that humanity wasn't just a footnote in the history of the stars. They were about to take control of their own destiny. The hum of machines filled the facility as the team worked tirelessly, but the tension was thick in the air. Dr. Samuel Roth's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the quantum energy core's stabilizer, his eyes fixed on the fluctuating readouts. This was it, the moment they had all been working toward. The warship was nearly ready, and the power source was primed for testing. One successful test, and humanity would have the weapon to challenge the Coalition. One failure, and everything they had built would come crashing down. Lena Hayes paced back and forth, her mind racing. How long until it's stable enough to test? She asked, her voice steady but sharp with urgency. She didn't want to ask, but she had to. Roth didn't look up, his focus solely on the delicate operation unfolding before him. We've got maybe 10 minutes if I can stabilize it long enough. If not, we'll be lucky if we're only dealing with a small explosion. Lena's brow furrowed as she glanced at the others. General Tan was already organizing the crew to evacuate to the safe zones, just in case things went sideways. Lena had learned long ago to plan for every possible outcome, but nothing could prepare her for the unknowns of harnessing quantum energy. It was revolutionary, dangerous, and powerful. And if they succeeded, it would change everything. Let's do it, Lena said, her voice unwavering. Roth nodded and began the final sequence to activate the core. The room buzzed with anticipation as lights flickered and systems powered up. The warship, still partially cloaked in shadows, loomed in the center of the hangar. Its sleek, almost alien design felt alive. Something more than a mere vessel, a manifestation of humanity's unyielding will to break free from the galactic chains that bound them. As the countdown began, Lena stood at the center of the room, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her. She could hear the quiet breath of her team, all of them holding their collective breath. The warship's engine hummed, its metal frame vibrating with raw energy, and the quantum core glowed brighter by the second. 5, 4, 3. Roth counted down, his voice tight with tension. The final second passed, and the power surged through the warship. The entire facility seemed to shake as a beam of blinding light shot up from the ship's core, cutting through the darkness like a lightning strike. The energy crackled in the air, the walls of the room vibrating with an intensity that rattled their bones. Then, a pulse, a shockwave of energy emanated outward, ripping through the air like a tsunami of force. The glow from the core intensified for a split second before everything went still. For a long moment, there was silence. Lena held her breath, waiting. Finally, Rolf let out a shaky laugh, his voice filled with disbelief. It worked. The hum of the ship's engines grew steady, and the quantum core stabilized, its power flowing through the warship's systems with ease. The energy readings were off the charts, far exceeding anything they'd ever hoped for. Lena's lips curled into a grin. This was just the beginning. With this ship, they could stand up to the coalition, and they wouldn't stop until they had their freedom. But as the crew let out relieved sighs and exchanged glances of victory, a cold shiver ran down Lena's spine. They had succeeded, but their success would not go unnoticed. The coalition would come for them. And when they did, it would be a fight for the future of humanity. The test was a success. The warship hummed with power, and humanity's first real weapon against the coalition was finally born. But the moment of victory was short-lived. The blinding pulse of energy from the quantum core had not gone unnoticed. It had been felt across the galaxy, like a beacon sent out into the stars, and it had drawn the attention of those who had long kept humanity in check. Lena Hayes stood in front of a vast holographic display, studying the tactical data. General Tan and Dr. Roth stood beside her, their expressions grim. "Coalition ships are heading straight for us," Tan said, his voice heavy with the weight of inevitability. "They've already locked onto the signal. We've been compromised." Lena clenched her fists. She had known this would come. She had known that the moment they unleashed the power of the warship, the coalition would retaliate. The laws of the galaxy were clear. Humanity was not to be allowed to rise, and the coalition would stop at nothing to ensure Earth remained a subordinate, isolated world. "How many ships?" Lena asked, her voice calm despite the chaos swirling in her mind. 5 capital ships," Tan replied. "At full fleet, they'll be in range within the hour." The warship stood in the hangar, its sleek form now a symbol of defiance, but it wasn't ready. There were still final adjustments to make, systems to fine-tune. The team had hoped for more time, but time was a luxury they no longer had. "We won't be ready in time," Dr. Roth said, his voice low, regret creeping into his tone. "The warship is powerful, but it's untested. We don't have the full capabilities yet. If we fight now, we might not stand a chance." Lena turned sharply to face him, her gaze fierce. "We don't have the luxury of ready. The coalition is coming. If we don't fight now, they'll wipe us out. There's no other option." Roth hesitated, then nodded. "You're right. We're not fully prepared, but we'll make do with what we have. We can't afford to back down." The tension in the room thickened as the crew began to mobilize. Engineers scrambled to make the final repairs to the warship, while military personnel suited up for battle. The team had trained for this moment, but nothing could prepare them for the reality of facing a coalition fleet in battle. Lena stood by the warship, her mind racing through strategies. They needed to strike first. The coalition would come in force, and if they could inflict enough damage, perhaps they could buy themselves time. Time to complete the warship, to refine its systems, to turn it into the weapon they had dreamed of. "General," she said, turning to Tan, "we can't wait for them to make the first move. We have to hit them while they're still assembling. Send everything we have. I'll lead the attack." Tan nodded without hesitation. "Understood, Commander. We'll give them everything we've got." The warship's engines roared to life as the crew prepared for the first real test of its power. Outside the facility, the distant hum of coalition ships grew louder, signaling their impending arrival. In moments, the vast expanse of space would become a battlefield. Lena climbed into the cockpit of the warship, her pulse steady, but her heart heavy with the weight of what was about to unfold. The stakes had never been higher. This was their moment, humanity's moment. There would be no turning back. As the warship lifted off, the massive hangar doors opened, revealing the stars beyond. The fleet was closing in. The time for hiding was over. The warship tore through the void of space, a gleaming silver arrow cutting through the stars. Inside, Lena Hayes remained focused, her hands steady on the controls. Her heart raced with a mix of adrenaline and dread. The coalition fleet was nearly upon them, but what they hadn't anticipated was how quickly the warship's new technology would level the playing field. The first strike had left the coalition fleet scrambling to reorganize. They hadn't expected such resistance from a species they considered primitive. But as the warship surged forward, taking the fight to the invaders, the toll of their defiance began to show. The ship wasn't perfect, and neither was the crew. The quantum core, still in its early stages of use, generated immense power, but it was also unpredictable. Systems began to flicker in and out, and the untested weaponry groaned under the pressure. The team had pushed their technology too far, too fast, and now they were starting to feel the consequences. Lena's voice crackled over the comms, her command sharp and clear. "Focus fire on their lead cruiser. We need to cripple them before they can regroup." From the tactical station, General Tan's voice was equally firm. "They're coming in fast, Commander. We can't keep this up much longer." Lena's jaw clenched. She could hear the strain in Tan's voice. He was a seasoned soldier, but even he had never faced odds like these. The coalition ships were massive, their firepower overwhelming. And yet, the warship held its ground. With every strike, they sent shockwaves through the enemy lines, disabling key systems and crippling the fleet's coordination. But the warship wasn't invincible. The strain of constant use was wearing on its systems. Over the comms, Dr. Roth's voice echoed through the ship's internal communications. "Commander, we're losing power. The quantum core's fluctuations are growing unstable. If we don't stabilize it soon, we'll be sitting ducks." Lena's fingers flew over the controls, her mind racing. They couldn't stop now. If they didn't take down the coalition ships, the warship would be sitting in the crosshairs of a much stronger enemy force. She clenched her teeth, trying to suppress the rising panic. "Status on the secondary systems," she barked at Tan. "Still holding, for now," Tan responded, his voice tight with concern. "But we're running out of options. We've sustained too much damage already." Lena felt a deep, gut-wrenching weight settle in her chest. Every move, every calculated risk had brought them to this moment. They had defied the coalition's grip on Earth. They had built a weapon with stolen technology and fragile hope. And now, they were paying the price. The warship was too advanced, too dangerous, and humanity was learning that it wasn't just the coalition that could threaten them. It was their own ambition. The sound of alarms blared as the warship's shields flickered once more, collapsing in places. A barrage of plasma fire struck the ship's hull, sending a tremor through the vessel. Sparks flew from the consoles, and the crew scrambled to contain the damage. "Commander," Tan's voice was urgent, "we need to retreat. If we don't, we'll lose everything." But Lena's gaze was fixed on the enemy fleet, her resolve unshaken. "We don't retreat. Not now. We fight until we can't anymore. We'll hold them off long enough to get the power back online." The cost of defiance was more than just blood and sacrifice. It was a relentless battle for survival. And humanity, for all its flaws, would fight to the very end. The warship groaned as another barrage of coalition fire slammed into its shields, sending a violent jolt through the hull. Inside the command deck, Lena Hayes gripped the controls with white-knuckled hands, her eyes narrowed in intense focus. She could hear the crew scrambling in the background, trying to stabilize the failing systems. Sparks flew from exposed wires, and the hum of the engines began to falter. "Shields are at 30%, Commander." General Tan's voice came through the comms, strained with urgency. "We won't last much longer at this rate. We need to retreat." Lena's pulse pounded in her ears. The Coalition fleet was relentless, pressing forward with all their firepower. Even with the quantum-powered warship, the odds were quickly stacking against them. The once unshakable confidence in their victory was beginning to crumble, replaced with the bitter taste of desperation. "We can't pull back," Lena replied, her voice cold, calculated. "If we retreat now, they'll chase us down. We lose everything we've worked for. We fight." Dr. Roth's voice, already cracked with exhaustion, joined the conversation. "The quantum core is unstable. I can't stabilize it any further without causing a total meltdown. It's already teetering on the edge. If we push it any harder, we'll all be dead." Lena's gaze darted to the rapidly deteriorating readouts in front of her. The core, once a beacon of hope, was now a ticking time bomb. The power surging through the warship was too much for its systems to handle. Each shot from the Coalition fleet pushed it closer to failure. One more impact, one more shot, and the core would overload, taking the warship, and everyone on board, with it. "Then we make it count," Lena said, her words steely, devoid of fear. "We're not going down without taking as many of them with us as we can." The tactical display blinked with multiple red warning signs as the warship's hull continued to buckle under the assault. The enemy ships, their massive guns aimed directly at the warship, were preparing for their final strike. The situation was clear. They had no chance of surviving a full-on engagement. Their only hope was to cripple the Coalition fleet before their ship collapsed completely. "Focus all remaining fire on the enemy flagship," Lena ordered, her voice sharp. "We need to hit them hard and fast, or this ends now." General Tan's voice came through once more, grim but resolute. "Aye, Commander. All batteries, fire at will." The warship's remaining weapons flared to life, launching a barrage of plasma fire at the Coalition flagship. The shots tore through space, striking the flagship's shields with devastating force. The massive ship shuddered, its hull dented and scorched. But it wasn't enough. The Coalition flagship retaliated immediately, sending a crushing wave of fire back at the warship. The shields buckled and collapsed entirely. Lena felt the tremor in her bones as the impact shook the command deck. The warship's control systems flickered, and the lights dimmed. She glanced at Tan, his face taut with anxiety. She knew they couldn't take another hit like that. The end was drawing near. "We're almost there," Lena muttered, almost to herself. "Just a little longer. Hold them off. Just a little longer." But the words felt hollow in her throat as she watched the impending destruction close in. She knew the choice she was making wasn't just for survival, it was for a future they might never see. In their final moments, the crew of the warship would either fall in defeat, or they would go down fighting, proving that humanity was not as fragile as the Coalition had believed. The warship trembled as another strike from the Coalition fleet hit its already battered hull. Sparks flew from shattered consoles, and alarms blared through the command deck. Lena Hayes gritted her teeth, her hands shaking but steady on the controls. The ship was dying, and so were they. There was no denying it anymore. The tactical display in front of her was a mess of flashing red lights, enemy ships closing in on every side. General Tan stood behind her, his face etched with a mixture of determination and resignation. They both knew this wasn't a fight they could win. But it wasn't about winning anymore. It was about making sure humanity's message was heard across the galaxy, about showing the Coalition that Earth wasn't just a planet to be ignored. "All batteries," Lena called out, her voice unwavering despite the gravity of the situation. "Fire everything we've got. We'll take down their flagship, or we'll burn with it." The command was met with a roar of agreement from the crew, the last remnants of their resolve coursing through the ship. They had fought for too long, against too many odds, to give up now. Even as the warship's systems faltered, they would fight until their last breath. General Tan glanced at the readouts. "We have one shot left, Commander. The remaining plasma reserves are almost depleted. If we miss—" "We won't miss," Lena interrupted, her voice like steel. She knew it wasn't just about the ship anymore. It was about everything they had worked for. The hope of Earth, the hope of a free humanity, depended on this moment. The warship lurched as another round of enemy fire rocked the ship. The shaking intensified, but Lena held firm. She was locked on the target, the Coalition flagship, its massive silhouette looming like a shadow over the battlefield, every inch of her being screamed that it was time to make this count. "Firing!" Tan shouted. The warship's remaining cannons erupted, sending a final barrage of plasma fire streaking toward the enemy flagship. The shots were perfectly timed, weaving through the chaos of the battle. For a heartbeat, time seemed to slow, and then, with a blinding flash, one of the shots struck the flagship's main reactor. The explosion was catastrophic. A violent shockwave rippled through the battlefield, throwing smaller ships aside like leaves in a storm. The flagship, once a formidable symbol of the Coalition's power, was now a mass of debris and fire, its once pristine hull now torn apart. The warship had done it. It had taken down the enemy's flagship, dealt a blow that would echo across the galaxy. But Lena knew that victory was fleeting. The warship's systems were failing faster now. The energy core was unstable, and the ship was quickly becoming a death trap. The crew was on borrowed time. "Commander," Tan said, his voice thick with emotion, "the flagship's gone. We've done it, but we're not going to survive this. It's time to—" "No." Lena's voice was firm. "We've made our mark. We've shown them. Earth is not to be forgotten." She turned to face the crew. The men and women who had fought beside her, who had defied the impossible, were ready. Some of them were already preparing to abandon the ship, but Lena refused to let them go without making sure the fight had counted. "This is humanity's stand," she said, her eyes steady, looking at every face in the room. "We go down fighting, and we go down proud. This ship is our legacy. We've given everything, and that's enough." With a final, defiant roar of engines, the warship continued forward, hurtling toward the remaining Coalition ships. The battle wasn't over, but humanity had proven its worth. It had ignited a fire across the galaxy, a fire that no one could extinguish. The warship hurtled toward the remaining Coalition ships, its engines sputtering and flickering, but it refused to slow. In the final moments of their battle, the crew had become a single, unified force, each of them knowing the price they were about to pay. Lena Hayes stood resolute at the helm, staring down the enemy fleet that loomed in the distance. The warship's massive form, crippled and on the verge of collapse, was a testament to their fight, their rebellion, and it was about to become their final act. "Commander, the energy core is going critical." Dr. Roth's voice crackled over the comms, trembling with panic. "If we don't stop the core, it's going to detonate and take us all with it." Lena's heart clenched. She knew that. She'd known it since the moment they had launched into battle with a barely functional warship. The core, unstable from the start, had reached its breaking point. There was no way to shut it down now, not without killing everyone aboard. "Can we use it?" Lena asked, her voice tight with determination. "Is there any way to channel the power into the enemy fleet?" Roth's silence stretched out, and for a moment, Lena felt a flicker of hope that maybe there was another way, a way to take down the rest of the Coalition. But Roth's next words shattered that brief flicker. "It's too volatile. If we try, we'll be vaporized before we can even reach them. I can't do anything more." Lena's gaze shifted to the view screen, where the coalition ships were closing in. Their massive guns were primed, aimed directly at the warship, ready to obliterate them. She could see the crew scrambling below deck, trying to make sense of the chaos, trying to keep systems running. But it was all slipping away. "Understood," Lena whispered. She turned to General Tan, who had remained at her side throughout this desperate fight. His face, once filled with resolve, now showed the wear of battle, his eyes tired and resigned. He stepped up to her, his voice barely a whisper. "We did what we had to do. Earth will remember us. Lena, we gave them a chance." Lena nodded, her throat tight. She knew he was right. This fight had never been about surviving. It had been about showing the galaxy that humanity was not weak, not to be controlled or ignored. The coalition might have the power, but humanity had heart. "Maybe they'll fight harder because of us," Lena said, her voice steady but with a quiet sadness. "Maybe they'll know we're worth fighting for." Tan gave her a half smile, the expression sad but proud. "You'll never know for sure, but you've made your mark, and that's what matters." The final blow from the coalition fleet hit the warship. The entire vessel shuddered violently, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause in that gut-wrenching silence before everything went white. The quantum core finally reached its tipping point. The overload was unavoidable. But in those final moments, as the warship erupted in a cascade of light, there was a flicker of something, of hope, of defiance. The warship was destroyed, but humanity's spirit, its fight for freedom, remained. Across the galaxy, the coalition fleet faltered, the shockwave of their flagship's destruction still reverberating in their ranks. Humanity had proven that they were more than just a conquered race. They were a force to be reckoned with. And though Lena Tan and the crew were gone, their legacy lived on.